Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be creating a CRUD API using Node.js. As you can see in our database we have some data. Let's go to Postman and add some more data. Okay, so in here we're going to change the name to Undertaker. Comment, I am going to beat John Cena. Okay, and then I'm going to change the method from get to post. Okay, and then I'm going to send this, so the data is posted to a database. I'm going to also add more. This one is going to be I don't know, I forgot the wrestlers. I forgot the names. Truth, I am the champion, and then champion. Then I'm going to send the data, and I'm also going to add one more. So this one is going to be Booker T, and then I am the king. Okay, and then I'm going to send. The method is post, and then finally I'm going to think of another wrestler. Lita, I am the champion. I'll just say the champion as well. Champion. Okay, champion. And then I'm going to say comma, and then I'll do completed. So by default this completed is going to be false, but if you change this to true it's going to be true, and then I'm going to say send. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the request to get, and then I'm going to get all of the data. Now we should have new data. We should have Batista, Undertaker, Truth, and Booker T, and Lita. Okay, so now let's delete some data. So to delete some data, I'm going to copy an ID. I'm going to copy this ID. So this is Lita, and then I'll paste it after the API endpoint, and then I'll send, and then the data will be deleted. So now I'll try the get request. Actually, I'm getting the data, and then I'm going to change this to delete, to the delete method, and then now the data has been deleted, and then I'll get the I'll do the get request to see if the data exists, and then the item does not exist. Now it's been deleted. Okay, that means it doesn't exist anymore. So I'll remove this ID, and then I'll get everything. As you can see, Lita is gone, and then I'm going to do the same for Booker T. I'll copy the ID, and then I'll paste it here. I'm going to say delete method, and then I'll send, and when I try to get this ID, it's gone. It doesn't exist. Okay, so I'm going to remove this ID as well, and then I'll do the get method. And then if you want to get a single item, you just copy the ID. Okay, and then I'll paste it after. It will be Yuri Boyka. Okay, training for the fight. And also if you go to the database online, if I refresh this, it's going to update accordingly. Okay, so this is the data we've added: Undertaker, Truth. So we're going to delete now one more. We're going to delete Batista. So when I go to Postman, and then I'll remove this ID, and then let's look for Batista. There it is. I'll copy this, and then I'll get Batista. It's just one item. We're getting one item. And then if I want to delete, I'll change the method to delete, and then we'll delete this item. So now when I try to get this item, it doesn't exist. And then as well as when I refresh in the browser, in the database, it's all gone. Batista is not here. Okay, so now let's try the update method. Okay, so we want to update. Let's remove this. Let's get all of the items. So we want to update this item here, the first item from Yuri Boyka. So I'll copy the ID and then paste it. So that's the ID that we want to update. Okay, so the completed is goes to true. I'm going to remove completed. By default, completed is set to false. So hopefully this one is going to change from true to false. and then the name, and then the comment. We're going to change this. So the name, we're going to change from Yuri Boyka to Jean-Claude. I think this is the spelling, I don't know, Van Dam, I don't know how to spell this name. And then I am a very popular actor. Okay, so when I send this, okay, the data is going to change, hopefully. Oh, I'm doing a get method actually. I'm supposed to do a patch. Okay, so it's going to be patch. Seems like there's an issue. Name, comment. Seems like there's an issue with our function. Okay, so I don't know what the issue is, but I'm going to fix this in the video. Okay, now as you can see, it's fixed. As you can see, now we have Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'm a popular actor. Okay, we've updated the data. Okay, we can also re-update this data. Okay, I'm going to get this single item. I'm getting it, so it's Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'm going to change this to Matt Damon. Okay, and then I'm going to change the comment as well. Okay, so I'm going to change the method to patch. So okay, it's working. I didn't realize that I didn't send a message to show that it's working, but it is working. The status is 200. I just didn't show the message. Okay, so when I get this ID, when I get the ID, it's going to be updated. When I cancel this and then I'll do get, it's going to change to my daemon, because I didn't send the message to show that I've updated the data. But anyway, it's showing here. When I remove the ID and then I'll get everything, and then my daemon is here, and then as well as when I refresh in the browser, my daemon is going to be the first one. There it is. Okay, alright, I'll see you in the video. Alright, now let's open the terminal. We're going to run a command. It's going to be npm init. Okay, so we're going to create a JSON file, a package.json. So give the name of CRUD. You can give it whatever name that you want. And then version, just click OK. Description, you can just say CRUD API. And then the entry point is going to be app.js. And then test command, just press enter, 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 and you can put your name. Okay, and then yeah, now we have a package.json. Okay, so we're also going to run some commands. npm install, we're going to install Express, and then we're going to install .env, and then we're going to install Mongoose. I think that's what we need for now, and then just hit enter. Okay, so now once we've installed these, let's create some folders. So this one is going to be DB for database connection, and another one is going to be models. It's folder, delete this. Okay, and then new folder. This one is going to be models, and then another one is going to be routes, and finally another one is going to be controllers, like so. Alright, so now let's create a new file. It's going to be app.js. Okay, so now we're going to require express. So require express, and then here we're going to do const app is equals to express. Okay, and then here we're going to say const port. We're going to create a server is equals to 5000. Okay, and then down here we're going to do app dot get. So once we reach the home page of our website, we're going to pass a callback function in here. So we're going to send the request and then response. Okay, so once we reach this slash, which is the home page, we want to send a response. So response of status of 200, it means it's okay if the status is 200, and then we're just going to say .send. Okay, here we're just going to say all is working, or we can, yeah, is working, or we can console log this. Okay, and also we need to put the port, because we're going to listen to port. So down here we're going to do app.listen .listen. So in here we're going to listen to the port, so port, and then comma, and then in here we're going to pass in a callback function rec and res. Okay, so in here we're listening for the port, so we can say console log cog you are listening, yeah, to port, and then I'll just say comma port, our port variable. Okay, so in here we're going to console log the port we're listening to. Okay, so in here I'm going to say, I'm going to go to the package.json, and then in the scripts I'm going to change this to start. Oh, we need to install something else as well. npm install nodemon, so we can save our files without restarting the server. Okay, alright, start do nodemon app.js. Okay, so let's run npm start. Okay, something is missing. Nodemon doesn't seem to be showing in the dependencies. Let me reopen this. Package.json. Okay, let me reopen. Okay, now nodemon is showing. Let's let me retry to do nodemon. Oops, start, and then nodemon app.js. Okay, so now let's retry to run again. Alright, so now our server is working. We're listening to port 5000. So now let's go to the browser and go to the localhost 5000. I think it's 5000. Okay, so now we're at localhost 5000, and then it's working. So we're getting the home page, which is 5000. So it's saying always working. So for example, if I say about, okay, let's say about, when we route to the about, and then when I refresh, it doesn't exist. So now if we route to the about, it should show all is working. Okay, so that means our server is working and everything is working. I'll see you in the next video where we're going to connect to our database. Okay, so now let's try to connect to our database. So make sure you have an account. If you go to Atlas MongoDB. Atlas MongoDB. Just create an account here, and then create a new cluster, and then from there you'll be able to create a new database. So I'm not going to show you the whole process because I already have an account for this. Okay, so it's just follow simple instructions. It's not that difficult to do. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the user. I'm going to go to my account. I'm going to go to Atlas. Okay, so I'm going to log into my account now. You can log in with your own account. Okay, alright, it's taking a while to log in. Okay, so once you've followed the instructions, and then it's just create a new cluster. It's easy to create. Okay, and then you see something like this after that, and then just click this connect here. Click connect, and then connect to your application, and then copy this string. Okay, copy this, and then close. And then go to the VS Code. I'm going to put this on another tab. Okay, and then go to VS Code. Create a new file in here. It's going to be .env. So remember, we've installed the .env .env library with our with Node.js. Okay, so now we're going to create a new variable in here. It's going to be Mongo connection key, or connect is equals to that link. Okay, the one you've copied. So make sure on the database you can put the database name here. It will create automatically here. So if you don't change this name of the database, it's going to create a database with this name. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just change this to something like YT CRUD API. That's the database I'm going to create, like this one. Make sure you don't remove this question mark, YT CRUD API, and then here you put your password. Okay, make sure you don't share the password with someone else. Okay, put your password here, and then I'm going to put my password outside the screen so you don't see my password. Okay, alright, so now I've put my password. I want to save this. Okay, and then in here I'm going to create a new file. This one is going to be git ignore. So when I push this code to GitHub, it doesn't push the .env file. Okay, so .env. And also I want to ignore the node modules folder. Node modules. Alright, I want to ignore the folder. Okay, so now we have that. Oh my days, I think I need to remove my speakers so you don't hear the sound. Okay, so now we finished with the env and the git ignore. In the db connection, I'm going to create a new file. This one is going to be connect.js. Okay, in here I'm going to require mongoose. Okay, so we're importing mongoose from the npm packages. Okay, so in here we're going to do const and then connect db is equals to we're going to pass in a URL inside as a parameter. Okay, so in here I'm going to return a connection. return mongoose dot connect. Okay, and then it's going to take two parameters. So the first one is going to be the URL, and then the second one an object. So these are some rules that we want for this connection. So it's going to be use new URL parser. It's going to be true, and then we're going to use create index. So you can find this on the Mongoose documentation. It shows all this, how to do this, and then use find and modify to false. Okay, to false, and then we're going to use unified topology to false as well. Alright, so now we're going to export this connection. So we're going to do module dot exports. So we're going to export this. So it's going to be connect db. Let me make this bigger a bit. Alright, connect db. So now I save this. If I go here, if I say mongoose connection connect, it will tell you like what to do. The documentation, there should be, I remember I was looking at this before. Anyways, never mind, let's just go ahead in the app.js. In here we're going to create some middleware here. I'll just say middleware. So this one is going to be app.use express.json. We want our data to be in JSON format. Express.json. Okay, so up here we're going to import the module that we exported, the connection. So the connection module is going to be const connect db. It's goes to require. It's coming from db connect. Alright, so in the connect we're going to connect down here. So get rid of this about, and also we can also get rid of this as well. Alright, so in here we're going to type connection, and then we're going to do const start a function. So this one is going to be an asynchronous function. We're going to use async await. So we're going to do async function. So it's going to be an arrow function. Okay, so we're going to await the connection. So await connect db. Okay, so because the connection might take a bit of time to connect, so we're just going to await the connection. Okay, so in here we're going to put that URL. Remember the one we pasted in the env. Okay, so the URL is going to be process. To access that URL from the .env, it's going to be process .env whatever name. I've named it. I forgot the name. I'm going to put this on another screen so you don't see my password. Okay, I'm just going to paste the name. Alright, there it is. So dot the name, and then I'll paste in the name for the connection. So after that I'm going to do app.listen. Remember, we want to listen to port, which is port 5000, and then we're going to do request and then response, and then in here we're going to clg you are listening to port, and then we're just going to pass in the port variable, and then yeah, that's it. And then we're going to run the start function in here, start, and then we're going to save. Actually, there's something we need to do. Okay, we're going to require .env. We're going to say require .env, and then we're going to say .config. Okay, so if the database connection work, this will print, okay, to the console. So let's save. Okay, now there's an issue. Nodemon crashed. I need to rerun this. Cancel, and then let me wrap this in try and catch. I'll do try catch. Okay, I'll do the connection. If that doesn't work, and then I'm going to COG an error. Alright, so try and catch. Try this connection. If it doesn't work, and then COG the error. Okay, now let's rerun this. I'm going to clear this, clear, and then npm start. Okay, another issue. db connect db line 9. What did I do? Oh, okay, now I'm going to save this and then save app.js. I'm going to rerun this again. So Control C to cancel this, and then I'm going to clear, and then npm start. Another issue. Express.json. I meant app.use. I don't know why it says arguments. App.use. Okay, so if there's something saying you're listening to port 5000, that means everything is good. So if I rerun this, it says you're listening to port 5000, that means everything is good. Now we have the connection. Our database has been created. I'll see you in the next video where we're going to start with implementing our routes. Okay, so now let's work on our routes. So below the app use express.json, we're going to do our routes. So here we're going to do app.use, and then we're going to set our main URL for the API. So the main URL is going to be API, and then version of the API v1, or you can just leave the version out, and then we're going to do CRUD. Okay, so this is the main URL of our API. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and then inside the routes I'm going to create a new file. It's going to be called CRUD.js. So in here we're going to require express. Okay, we're going to require express, and then in here we're going to invoke const router. We're going to say it's equals to express.router. Okay, so down here we're going to say router.route. We're going to route to some URL. Route. Where are we going to route to? To the slash, and then the second one is going to be router dot route, where we're going to route to slash, and then we're going to add a param. This one is called a URL parameter. I'll show you what I mean later. So URL parameter. So if I go to the web, I'm going to show you express URL parameter params. So they're called params. Okay, where are they? route paths. There should be somewhere here. So there's different kind of parameters for URLs. You know, I'm overthinking this. I'll show you later. Let's just focus on the project. Okay. So in here, I'm going to do module.exports. I'm going to export the router. Okay. So now I'm importing the package express, and then I'm invoking router, and then I'm setting some routing parameters here, and then we have a base URL for the API. So in here I'm going to require the router. Okay, so I'm going to import the router. Okay, so I'm going to say const router require from routes, and then CRUD. Okay, so this router, where is it going to go? So this router is going to go next to our base API URL. So next to it I'm going to say router. So, okay, so now when I save, everything should work. We should have no errors. So now when I go to the browser, I say localhost 5000, and then I say /API v1, and then CRUD, I think CRUD. Okay, cannot get API v1 CRUD. Okay, so this is our base router. Okay, but it is there, you see. Okay, so now let me show you that it works. So what we're going to do inside the controllers, we're going to create a new controller. It's going to be CRUD controller.js. Okay, so in here we're not going to import anything. We're just going to create a couple of new functions. So these are going to be asynchronous functions. It's going to be get or data. So this one is going to be await, and then the data that we're going to get. Okay, so it's going to have two parameters, the request and the response. Oh, not await, it's supposed to be async. I don't know what I'm thinking. And then in here we're going to say COG, oh, that's all the data. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this a few times. Okay, then this one is going to be create data, create new data, and then this one get one data. It doesn't make sense. I just say get one item. And then this one we can do update. And then this one, finally, this one is going to be delete data, delete all the data. So down here I'm going to say exports dot module export. It's actually module dot exports. Then I'm going to export everything. So I'm going to start with get all the data, create data, create data, and then get one item, and then update data, and then delete data. So I'm exporting all these. Okay, so I'm going to have access in the routes. So in the routes, I want to have access to those functions, to the CRUD functions. So I'm going to say const, I'm going to destructure. Okay, so the names are as following. We get our data, create data. So I'm going to destructure, get our data, create data, get one item, update our data, and delete data. And then I'm going to say this is coming from, we're going to say require, it's coming from dot, it's coming from models, actually controllers, and then CRUD. Okay, so this is the whole thing. I can put this like this. Okay, so it's coming from controllers. Okay, here I'm going to say once I reach the main endpoint, the main UI of the API, I'm going to say get. I'm going to put a get request. I want to get all of the data that we have in our database. Okay, so in this case, the get, inside the get, I'm going to say get, I'm going to put the get all data function. Okay, so this function is coming from our controllers. So once we use the get request on this URL, we want to get all the data. Okay, so now let's save. Let's see when we visit our base URL, we should get all of the data that we have in our API, in our database, I mean. Okay, I need to restart the server. Okay, now npm start. Okay, so now let me rerun this. Seems to not be running. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so to get our data, require, okay, actually we're getting the data. It's down here. It's printing down here. Okay, that's all the data. So when I copy this URL and then I'll open Postman, we're going to perform a get request. Okay, so I'm going to say send. So perform a get request. Okay, it's not working. Let's see why. So what I'm going to do is coming to the console. When I do the get request, when I cancel this request, when I do the get request, it's printing to the console. Okay, every time I'm sending this function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say response dot status. So if the status is equals to 200, and then I'm going to send, and then all of the data, actually I'm going to say response.json, and then all of the data is here. So you can see, I don't know why I have an error here. Okay, let's do this. Okay, there it is. All of the data is here. Alright. Okay, so now what we're going to do now is let's focus on the get. Okay, we're going to get some data from our API. I mean from our database. So to do that, let's implement the controllers. Okay, so for the controllers, I'm going to say const CRUD is goes to await. What are we going to be waiting for? So the thing is, we need to do something before we do that. We need to create something. Let me go to the Atlas. I'll show you something that you need to know before we go anywhere. Open Atlas. Alright, so here, let me browse the collections. So we should have our API somewhere here. We should have our, database somewhere here. Okay, so it's not showing yet because there's nothing in the database, but it is there. It's just not showing at the moment. So what we need to do now, we just need to create something. You know what, I'll show you the demonstration that I want to show you. So I'll just say this test db, and then testing. Okay, so in here, what I'm going to show you is I can, let's say, insert document. I can, insert anything. I can say name. I can say name is goes to Josh, maybe. I can say name should be Josh, and then I'll say insert. Okay, now we have name. I'm going to insert more, and then this one is going to be maybe title. It's going to be Mr. Onzima, something like that. So you see, the data doesn't match. Here we have title, here we have name. There's no structure of the data. So what we need to do is to create something called a schema. We're going to structure our data in a specific format that our API is going to follow. Okay, because by default MongoDB it doesn't have a structure to follow, so you can create as different style of data in this database. So we need to create a schema. So I'll do mongoose schema. Okay, so a schema is something that allows us to create a specific data that's going to be accepted by our API. So we don't want just to accept random data. Okay, we want to follow a specific flow, like this. For example, this is like a schema. It's going to follow this flow. No matter what you do, no matter what you put, it's going to follow this. Okay, so that's what we need to do. We need to create our own schema that we're going to follow our own data. Okay, so what we're going to do now is inside the controls, actually inside the models, I'm going to create a new CRUD.js. So this is where we're going to put our schema. Okay, so now let's import something. Let's require something. We're going to require mongoose. Okay, so after requiring mongoose, we're going to say const CRUD schema is equals to new mongoose dot schema. So the schema is going to take an object. So in here I'll put an object, and then I'll say we want to have a name. Okay, name of the task that we're going to do. So the task is going to be type is going to be string. Okay, so we want the name to be type of a string. Okay, so but we want this name to be required. Okay, and then I'm going to say true. So I want this to be true. I want this name to be required, and then I'll put a string text, say provide a name. Okay, so we have to make sure that this name is not blank, so we have to provide a name. Alright, and then we're going to trim, and then we're going to say true, and then we can say max length, how do I spell it? Max length. So 50 characters. Name must be less than 50 characters. Must be less than or 50 characters, whatever. Okay, so after the name, we're going to have so it's a CRUD API. We can have any kind of data that we want. We can say maybe comment. So our type is going to be string type. Okay, so it's not necessarily required. Okay, so type string, you can actually put as much information as you want. So I don't need to do this. I'll just do string here, string, and then comma, completed, and then this one is going to be type boolean, comma, we're going to give it a default of false. Okay, alright, so now we have information to like data flow to follow. Okay, we can always follow this structure. We cannot go away from this structure. So this is our schema. We want our API to always follow this structure. Okay, so I'm going to export this module.exports. So we're going to say mongoose.model, and then we're going to say the model is like a table. Okay, if you've used MySQL before, it's like a table, so this is going to be called CRUD. Yeah, I think it's like a table. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think it's a table. Okay, there's only one way to find out anyway. So CRUD, we're creating a model called CRUD. Okay, so now the schema, we've exported the schema. So now what we need to do is import that schema inside our routes. Okay, so in our routes, I think actually we need to import that inside our controllers, I think. Yeah, in here. So we're going to say import, not import, require what did I name it? CRUD. Okay, require, okay, require dot controllers. It's actually, yeah, actually models, and then CRUD. All right. Okay. I'll do const CRUD schema. Okay, so in here I'm going to say const CRUD await CRUD schema dot. We're going to fetch all of the data that we have in our database. So to do that, we use the find. Okay, dot find. So in here we're going to say response dot status. If the status is 200, status 200, and then we're going to do .json. We're going to return the JSON data format, and then in here we just say CRUD. Okay, so whatever data that we find, we're fetching all of the data, and then we're returning it as JSON in JSON format. Okay, so what I can do is now go to the postman, and then I'll do a GET request. Okay, now I've CRUD. Okay, so the thing is, inside the CRUD there's no data. Okay, but it is the GET request is working. But let's create a functionality to create data. So to create data, we're going to use a post method, okay, to create data. So in here we're going to do const CRUD is goes to await our schema. So our schema is called CRUD schema. We're going to follow a specific so in here we're going to create a post. Okay, so to do that we're going to use a create. Okay, so inside here we're going to do request.body. Okay, so request.body. So the status for creating data is going to be res status 201. So that means something has been created. .json, and then in here, oops, we do the same thing, just add the CRUD. Okay, so now we have the CRUD functionality, but it's not going to work. We need to go to our routes. So after the get request on this URL, the base URL of our API URL. So on the base, we're going to post data in here. Post. We're going to post, and then we're going to put the function which is create data in here, which is coming from our controllers. Create data. Alright, so now create data, that's the functionality for posting data into our database. So now what I'm going to do on this base URL, I'm going to create some data. To do that, I'm going to body. So once you go to body, go to row, and then change the text from to JSON. Okay, and then in here we're going to create some data. So remember, we have name. I'll say maybe this one is JSON Klishko. Clisco, whatever, and then we say comment. Okay, so for the comment, I'm going to just say this is a random comment. Okay, so remember we had completed by default is going to be false, so it's going to add completed. So when I say send, it's working. So it's working. So to make sure that it's working, let's do a oops, actually, you know what, we send this, we're getting the data, we're using get method, we need to change this to post the data, to post, so to send the data to the database, and then we're going to press send. Okay, so now we have name and completed false. By default it's false because we didn't set the completed here to a value, so by default it's going to be false, and then the name is JSON and the comment. So once I do a get request and then I'll say send, and then in our database, see, we have one file now. When I go back to Atlas now, okay, so when I go back to Atlas and then I'm going to refresh this, okay, there it is, YouTube CRUD API. So when I open this, there it is, JSON Clisco, whatever that is. And then yeah, I'm going to add more data here. I'm going to say Yanika Mero, and then I'm just saying completed. Let's say this one to true. Completed to true, and then I'll say hiking for 2 hours or something, I don't know. And then we're going to put method post, and then we're going to post this. Okay, now it's adding our data, and then I'm going to change this to Vladimir okay, whatever, and then training for fight. Okay, and then I'm going to send, and then do another name, Yuri Boyka, and then send, and then I'll remove completed for this one. Josh, okay, alright, so now I've added some data. So now everything should work. Now let's do the get request. So if I refresh the page, you're going to see our data is in our database. Okay, alright, so now I'm going to take a break for now, and then I'll see you in the next video. We're going to implement other controller functions as well. I'll see you then. Okay, so since this is a beginner friendly tutorial, we're going to keep it beginner friendly. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to do try catch just in case we get some errors. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the try catch, then the catch I'm going to show the error, so just in case we got the error, so it's server error res.status 500, so 500 is server error. Okay, .json, then the message is going to be error. Okay, So whatever error, server error that we have is going to show like this. Okay, let's do the same for this one too. Cut, try catch. Okay, we're going to display server error. Same. Okay, so now let's work for getting one task. So this is a little different from the create method and the get method. The get or data method and the create data method. So it's quite different. So this one is going to be we're going to get one item based on the ID. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to remove this get one item. I'm going to say const. So this one is good. I'm going to destructure. I'm going to get the ID. Okay, so this ID is going to be coming from the, remember what I told you about the URL parameters. So this is the ID. Okay, I'm going to get this ID here. So you can name this, for example, you can say maybe item ID. So I can say item ID, and then I'll go back to the controllers, and then this one, instead of ID, this is the param, it's going to be item ID now, and then I'm going to name this to CRUD ID. Okay, and then I'm going to say is equals to request dot params. Okay, I'm going to get this from the request dot params. Okay, so request dot params is going to give me this ID. Alright, so in here I'm going to say const CRUD is equals to await task. It's actually CRUD schema dot. So to get one thing is going to be find one, and then in here I'm going to give an ID. To give a name of what the ID is going to look like. You can give this to whatever name you want. You can say ID, or you can say item ID. Actually, I'm going to stick with item ID, and then in here I'll put the item, the CRUD ID. Okay, you can put whatever name you want. You can say ID. Actually, I'll just say ID just to make this easier to understand. Alright, so I'll say I'm going to do a basic check. So if the ID is not there, okay, if the ID that I'm looking for is not there, I'm going to return a 4 error. So it's not found because it doesn't exist if it is not there. Status 44.json. Okay, so I can say message. I can give this a custom message. I can say item doesn't exist. Oh, does not. I know why I'm getting that error. So does not exist. Okay, we can do it this way. Item does not exist. Alright, so it doesn't exist, and then if it does, I'm going to send a status of 200, which is going to be to JSON, and then in here we do CRUD. Okay, so but we need to, okay, we've already done that. We set the item ID actually here. So after the main endpoint of our API, we're going to put an ID after that, which is a URL parameter. Okay, so when I go to postman and then can't even remember. Okay, this is the one. I'm going to do a get request. Oh, actually we're not running our server. npm start. I'll go back to Postman, and then I'll do get request, and then I'll get in all the data we have in our database. So now I want to get only a specific item with the ID. So what I'll do is I'll do slash, and then I'll put the ID, and then I'll get. It's not working. Cannot get the data that we've requested. Let's see why it's not working. I don't think we've put the function here. We need to add that. So this one is get1 dot get one item. Alright, so we're getting one item. So now hopefully the functionality is going to work. So now I'm going to send the get request. Alright, so now we're returning only one item that we're requesting. We can also, I'm going to remove the ID, get everything. I'm going to change the ID to random class key, whatever name I've put there, and then I'll paste the ID next to the endpoint, and then it's returning the data that we've requested. Alright, so now let's go to the update. So update, actually we need a try catch as well, so cut this so we can put this in a try catch. Just in case we have a server error. Okay, here we're going to copy this error 500 and then paste. Okay, so down here update, it's not update all data, it should be just update data. I'll go to the routes and change this to update data as well. Okay, update data, which seems like we have an error. I don't know what's going on. Update or data is not defined. Where is it not defined? CRUD.js controllers. Update data. Oh, there it is. Alright, so now we were exporting something that didn't exist. Okay, now we have an issue again. What is it? Update or data. Oh, it's update or data. Oh, I've named the delete or data as well. We're going to fix that later. Okay, so for the update data, remove this. We're going to const CRUD is equals to CRUD schema dot. So to be able to update data, it's find by ID and update. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that const. I'm going to destructure the ID from the params. So what I've named it, if I go to routes, item ID, so it's coming from the params. Okay, I go and then I'll do item ID, and then I'll do this one. What did I name it here? CRUD ID, something like that. It's equals to request dot params. We're getting the params, which is our URL parameter. Alright, so in here we're going to give the name to ID, and then this one is going to be CRUD ID. Alright, and then after that rec.body, because we're updating, Okay, and then after that we need to do a basic validations. Okay, so we're going to say new, it's going to be true, and then run validators goes to true because we're doing basic validations. Okay, so if it doesn't exist, we're going to return an error, 404 error, res.status status 44, it doesn't exist. .json, which is a message no items with that ID. Okay, else we're going to say res.status 200, and then we're going to do .json, and then we're going to return to do a response of the CRUD, whatever we are doing. Okay, we don't necessarily need this actually because we're updating the data, but we're just going to keep it anyway. So cut this. You know, it's getting a bit repetitive, you know, doing this try and catch. It's getting boring, but on later videos we're going to do something a little more advanced instead of doing this try and catch all the time. Okay, okay, all right, so in here I'm going to copy the error 500 and paste here. Okay, so now hopefully we should be able to update. Before we do that, we need to go to the routes. After the main endpoint of our API, we're going to add an ID, which is a URL parameter. So this one, I think it's going to be patch. I think patch or put, I think one of those. Let me double check. Where's the browser? Okay, I'm going to do patch. It says put. Okay, it's a bit confusing to use patch and put, so I think I think it's patch. We're going to do patch actually. Patch, and then this one is going to be update data. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select an ID. So this is the ID of Vladimir class, whatever. We're going to update this. Okay, so this ID here is this one. We're going to update it. So up here, I'm going to say actually I don't need to put the ID here. I just need to change the values here. So this one, from the ID from Vladimir class key, I'm going to change this to, you know what, for you to be sure it is that, I'm going to do a get request. Okay, Vladimir class key, this same ID. This is not Vladimir. Okay, so you know we're updating. So what I'll do is patch 52222, so you know, and then I'll patch, and then I'm going to send. Okay, message, there's nothing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this ID to see if the data has been updated. Okay, so the data is not updated. We're going to see why it's not updating. Okay, let's double check. Patch update data. Let's go back to the models, to the controllers I mean. Okay. Oh, you know what? I'm supposed to do await. Okay. Because we're using as synchronous function, we need to do await. So let's go back again. Let's do patch and then send. Okay, so now the data is now patched. So now we've changed the data to training for fight to for example, if I say John Cena, it's going to update to John Cena. So now it's saying, oh, this is John Cena. Okay, so now we've finished with our functionality for the update data. So now delete data, not all data, just delete data. Okay, so to delete data, we're going to delete a specific item. We're going to do the same for the ID, so I'll copy this ID from params as well. We're getting this from the params. We're going to do the same thing as well. We're going to do try catch, catching for an error. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go to the routes and I'm going to do dot delete method. So for the delete method, I'm going to do delete data. Okay, so now we're going to delete the data and issue, which is routes delete. Delete data, modules, exports, controllers, delete data. Okay, now it's working, no issues. Okay, so in here I'm going to say const CRUD is the same thing, await. Don't forget the await, otherwise we'll get an issue. So await CRUD schema. So dot find one and delete, because we want to delete one item. Okay, dot find by ID and delete, by ID and delete. Okay, so it's the same thing that we've been doing. So here we're going to say ID, and then the ID is going to be CRUD ID. So CRUD ID, that's going to be our ID. Okay, so now if it doesn't exist, the item that we're trying to delete, if CRUD, if it doesn't exist, what are we going to do? So it's just the normal 404 error, no item with that ID, it doesn't exist. Okay, so make sure it's an if statement, doesn't exist, else you know what, for the create, for the update data, you can remove this status here, you don't need it. Actually, you can remove it. Okay, you know what, just leave it now. We don't need the JSON. Actually, we can just say status 200. We don't need the JSON. So where did this else come from? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll say res dot status. I'll just stick on 200. Then I'll do JSON. Okay, so in here we're going to delete something, which is going to be whatever we've requested using our ID. So for the error, I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, pass in the error, and then in here in the update data, I'm just going to return the res status only. We don't need to return the message, the body. Okay, alright, so now hopefully we should be able to delete this item here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change from patch to delete. Okay, I'm not sure if it's been deleted, but I'm going to get. It does not exist. See, message item does not exist because it's been deleted. Does not, says item does not exist. Okay, so this item has been deleted. It does not exist anymore. So what I'll do is I'm going to get all of the data in the database. Okay, if we're getting all of the data, I want to delete this JSON CLISCO. I'll copy this ID, copy, I'll put it in here. I'll get it. Okay, only that item. I think we've messed up our ID. Let me see how I messed up the ID. Okay, get, remove this ID. Get, I'll copy this item properly. Okay, and then get. Okay, now we're getting the item. I'm going to delete this ID. Delete, make sure you see the name JSON CLISCO. Send, and then it's going to be deleted. When I get this, item does not exist anymore. And then when I get on the main point, it's not there anymore. Even if I go to the database, JSON CLISCO, it was there, but now when I refresh, it's not there anymore. It's gone. So now we have only 4 items. I'll do a delete request again. So I'm going to delete another item. As you can see, we have only 4 items in here. I'm going to now delete another one, which is this one. Send, get, and then we're going to delete. And then when I get, it doesn't exist. When I get all of everything, there should be 3 items left. Alright, as you can see, we have now 3 items. So the only thing that we have to do now is do the headers. For example, if I want to access this API on the front end, we're going to get some errors because of the headers. We're not going to be able to access it. So we want everyone to be able to access this API. So to do that, we're going to do some headers in the app.js. Okay, I'm going to take a break for now, and then I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so now let's handle some calls. Okay, so if you are going to try to use that API on the front end, you're not going to be able to because of the calls issue. Okay, so to do that, let's go to our middleware. We're going to do another middleware. It's going to be app.use. It's another app.use. Okay, so this is going to be another middleware. So this one is going to be a little different from the ones that we did before. So this one is going to take a callback function. We're going to do request, and then response, and then it's going to take a next method, and then okay, in here we're going to say response dot header. Okay, So if you want to learn more about this, the handling of the calls, you can just go calls Node.js, something like that. It's a big topic in, alright, so you can just, Google it, how to work with calls and stuff. Okay, so response.header. Oops, here there's an issue here. Alright, response.header. In here we're going to say access control allow origin. Okay, if we are to copy this and put in the browser, you can find more information about it. Okay, they'll tell you whatever, how to use it. There's so many calls that you can use in here. Okay, so in here for today's tutorial, we're only going to use like 4 or 5 of them. Okay, we don't need to do many calls for this one. Okay, so we want to do access control allow, access control allow origin. Okay, so for this one I'm going to say comma, we're going to allow everything. So star, it means everything. Okay, star. Alright, so I'll go down here. I say if the request method is equals to options. Okay, so I'm going to say response.header and then access allow methods, access control allow methods. So we're going to choose what methods we can use. Okay, access control allow methods. So we want to use all of the common methods, the post, get, delete. Okay, so we're going to say put, we're going to say put post patch delete and get. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 methods. Okay, so these are the common methods you can do. Okay, and then I'm going to return response.status 200 .json. I'm just going to do an empty object. Okay, so we're going to also invoke the next function. Okay, if we don't invoke the next function, it's not going to work. So invoke next function down here. Okay, so these are the methods that we're going to accept, okay, on the front end. So now when I save, everything should work. And also when you try to get this URL, the local host host 5000. Okay, everything should work, okay, accordingly. So when you try to utilize this link, for example, you're building a CRUD application in the front end. When you try to utilize this link, everything should work as expected. Okay, yeah, I think that's it for this mini series. So this was only aimed for beginners, for people who are starting out using Node.js. In the future, I'm going to be making more complicated and advanced videos as well. And I'm also quite new to Node.js as well. I'm still learning Node.js, so I think the best way to learn is to teach whatever you know. That's what I'm doing. So I'm teaching just stuff that I already know right now at the moment from Node.js, but in the future I'm going to be making more complicated videos as well. Okay, I think that's it. I'll see you in the next video.